Welcome to Moving Panels, Ignite the Mic. From Gotham's alleys to galaxies far, we dive in deep, we set the bar. Debates and takes, we bring the heat. Pull up a chair, join a seat. Moving Panels, where fandom takes flight. We review, discuss, and shed the light. Heroes, villains, every epic night. This is your show, your fandom's might.
Welcome to this Moving Panels One Shot. Let's have a nerdy little conversation. And I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today for this one shot is my fantastic co-host, my partner in crime. It is my wife, Bethany. How are you, Bethany?
I'm just fine. How are you today, Laramy?
I am good as we are moving along in our summer series. We're reached, I believe, like the halfway point. And today we are going to discuss how some movies have actually used the visual idea of comic books through their style, structure, and pacing. So not necessarily, movies like we've done like The Incredibles or Hancock, where they're clearly, superhero comic book inspired, but more of
the aesthetic, possibly?
kind of the truly panel to frame. When they plan out a movie, they usually use storyboards, which essentially are comic book panels. So we're going to kind of look at the way some movies that you may not have thought of that were, in a few cases, I actually know for a fact, took inspiration from comics.
Right.
But we're going to talk about some of this. So think about the way you read a comic. So your eyes move across essentially static, frozen images, panels. Yeah. And again, I call this podcast Moving Panels because that's what is happening.
Right.
You're seeing these static images come to life and they start moving. And a comic book artist has to use the composition that's inside of that panel, that box, and the layout of the page, the geometry, and he keeps your eyes moving, like how to go, even if things aren't linear. There is an art to it, and okay, I read this panel, and then that panel, and then this panel, or even I read this speech bubble, and then that speech bubble. Like the order of doing things. It's not necessarily always even left to right. Sometimes it's a speech bubble that's slightly more to the right than the next speech bubble you're supposed to read.
Right.
And so when we take that into movies, Hollywood movies, they have this fluid motion through the cinematography, the way that the camera is moving. And that helps you get your emotion, the way you're supposed to feel, the realism sometimes. You talk about, a found footage movie, you're going to see more of that, moving of the camera than you would on another movie in which it's again, a static shot, or a steady shot. And then you've got directors that just completely reject realism, and we're going to talk about that. They shoot their movies as if they are shooting single shots or hand-drawn pictures that you literally could compose inside of a comic book panel. And I think that's where we'll start, because I also know this is a director that you are very familiar with, and that is Wes Anderson.
Yes.
So if you look at his films, so The Royal Tenenbaums, which of course I think
that one jumps out to my head the most.
But then you've even got like Moonrise Kingdom, The Fantastic Mr. Fox, which going into the stop motion animation, Grand Budapest Hotel, which I know one's a lot of people are familiar with.
Right.
And the way that he shoots his movies, he kind of works in a 2D surface, even though it's, a 3D world. He treats each shot as if it is a flat picture.
Image. Yeah.
Yeah. He uses, almost aggressively, he uses symmetry on there. We get shots of people just standing perfectly still.
But it forces you to listen to what's being said and pay attention to like how they're reacting to each other, because you're not distracted by any of the visuals or anything moving around, because it's just them standing against a wall.
And even if he's like, let's say that someone enters the room, he doesn't do your traditional pan. It's like a fast pan, and then now this shot.
Yeah.
And we're directly on that shot. What I also, and he has his characters. They don't move naturally. Like they might be standing in different levels, and
right,
and it feels
odd.
Yeah, it
feels a little
different.
surreal.
My favorite thing though is when he does like, I'm trying to think of an exact. I think there's something in Moonrise Kingdom where the scout kid has to grab some stuff, or I think in Fantastic Mr. Fox when they're planning it's like we need this and this and it shows each item.
Yeah,
and it's just a shot of that item. When we're talking about Wes Anderson, his movies almost have like this dollhouse look to them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they even use, when they're exterior shots, they're sometimes
are
models.
A dollhouse. Yeah,
they're actual models. When you're watching a Wes Anderson movie, does that hyper stylized, rigid framing that he uses, does it help you connect to the story, or does it feel just like you're watching a piece of art as you're observing it?
It depends on which movie it is, obviously, but also it makes you realize like the story is not what I'm watching, the story is what is being said. Like the story is not like this family, this dysfunctional family. The story is like, what is it about families? So you're listening to the dialogue, you're hearing the themes, and it's because the people aren't real. Like it becomes very obvious. Like these are not real people you're supposed to connect with, but yet there's still truth in it. And so you're focused more on the theme. So I guess it is more art that you're observing.
Yeah.
And you're pulling away themes. And yeah, obviously there's still things in it that you connect with. And there are jokes that you're going to laugh at. But all in all, like you're supposed to walk away with like more of a feeling than like well, this movie was about this, this, and this. And this happened, and it led to this happening, which led to this happening. It's not really the pace of his movies. It's more just like you walk out and go like, well, it was a movie about family. Well, it was a movie about fathers and sons. It's a movie about, boyhood, like things like that.
Yeah, I think that's because with comics, obviously we've got that same suspension of disbelief. We know we're looking at something in a comic book most times that is highly constructed.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the layout is all there. Yes, it is a visual medium like Hollywood films, but the same thing you're saying, it's through the story that those images connect for us, that we understand what we're seeing in the images. And that's where we feel the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Wes Anderson gets across with his as well.
And I mean, I don't know if I read comic books right, because I don't do it as frequently. But I am more focused on the words that are being said than the actual images. Like usually if I'm reading a graphic novel, I'm reading the words and then I might pay attention to what the picture is. Yeah. Like I'm not always focused on what the image is. And so I think that's kind of what Wes Anderson is doing. He's saying like what you're looking at, while is helpful, it's not the point.
Yeah. Well, and I think with comics, I don't disagree with you in the way of reading comics, but I think also with comics, especially if you're reading a physical comic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, with digital platforms, you have the ability to see one page or one panel, I should say,
right,
at a time. But if you're reading a physical comic, when you flip that page, you see that layout, and you kind of get a peripheral,
mm-hmm,
if not just a subconscious, idea of what is maybe
tone
about to come,
yeah,
or what's the tone of this page, what's happening as it's moving from panel to panel, which you do lose some of that when you are reading it, digitally, when it's jumping from panel to panel. You don't necessarily know if you're on the same page as the panel. You don't know
right,
when you've turned the page or stuff like that. But
kind of like Paper Girls, that thing that we talked about where like there was a section where
there was a whole comic
panel
where
was
each
happening.
panel was a different story. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you're reading it digitally, you almost get lost in the story,
yeah,
because you read like one person's story, then the next but it's like one line of one person's story,
Yeah.
and then the next, then the next, then the next. And then you go back to the first one, and the next, and the next, and the next.
Yeah, where I talked about in the when we did the Paper Girls episode, I talked about how you could almost read that comic by just reading the top panel and then read the second panel, and then it's a way to, which gets us into some of the other directors I want to talk about. My connection right now, though, you'll find out in a minute. I want to move into someone who's kind of the opposite. Instead of being so still and rigid, this is a director that's usually all over the place, and that's Edgar Wright.
Help me out.
So, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, of course, the Simon Pegg movies, but even Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Okay, which we know was based on a comic book.
Which is based on a comic book, yes. But again, before he did the
Right.
comic book, you're looking at Look of Shaun of the Dead and Hot
Shaun
Fuzz.
of the Dead is very comic booky.
Whereas in a Wes Anderson movie, where I talked about you have like the scout, like these are all the items I need, and they'd all be there, and they labeled. Now it's funny because in Scott Pilgrim there is where everything in the room gets labeled, but that's from the comic book. But if you go to like Shaun of the Dead, there's the scenes where Shaun needs to go somewhere, and so you get quick shot, he grabs his keys. Quick shot, he's tied his shoe.
Yeah.
Quick shot, the door has slammed. Quick shot, he's gotten into his car.
Right.
Yeah. It's that same idea, but he approaches it a slightly different way. It's that's still showing something that is just very mundane, but he gives it this hyper fast, extreme close up. Because I want to say there's even one point where they do it with him like brushing his teeth or something in Shaun of the Dead, or might be Hot Fuzz. And we also got the loud, the sound effects that are happening. Shaun pouring his cup of tea. We get that kinetic energy that goes along with that. And so, whereas Wes Anderson would put all of that into one shot, you've got Edgar Wright here, who is sticking like 10 panels into multiple, 3 seconds worth of screen time. And this is, I think it's doing that in things like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, that when he was asked to do Scott Pilgrim, I think it just flowed real well for him because it kind of fit the style of that comic. Marvel, I don't know if you know this. I know we've discussed the movie before. Marvel wanted him to do Ant-Man.
Oh, really?
He still has a writing credit on Ant-Man, but he wasn't. It didn't end up being the director. So there are some things I would say that you can still see a little bit of Edgar Wright in the Ant-Man movie. I mean, think about when the story is being told by Michael Peña's character.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very Edgar Wright. It's like, and then this guy told me this, and then he told me, and they're jumping back and forth and all that. So in those type of movies, the rapid fire montages, whatever you want to call, for doing something as simple as loading a shotgun or pouring another beer, does that type of pacing, how does that change the energy for you? Like, does it work more as a comedy? Because now Wes Anderson movies are meant to be comedic. Edgar Wright's are a little bit more comedic. So does that help with them being funnier because it's just so over the top?
I would say yes. I think it, like you said, the comedy of Shaun of the Dead and Scott Pilgrim is this like comedy of the mundane. Like it's this mundane world with these like crazy eccentricity things throughout. Like Shaun of the Dead, he's just going about his life, and also there's a zombie apocalypse happening. Like he's like, what would really happen to most people? Because most people aren't, going to survive a zombie apocalypse. So what are the regular Joes going to look like in a zombie apocalypse? And it adds this element of like action and engagement, but it adds a layer of comedy because the action that he's preparing is like stuff you do every day.
And I think that's the key word, is the action. Because when you talked about Wes Anderson, it's more of what's in the story and the dialogue. And a comic book works the same way. If the action's picking up, you may only get like 2 or 3 speech bubbles on an entire page. Like there will be panels in which there is just action.
Right.
Like there's no dialogue. I even go back to the Death of Superman run. As they approach the death of Superman, the panels, it went from 5 panels per page to 4 panels per page to 3 panels per page
down
to where in the issue that he died, every page was just one panel to the ultimate splash page of Superman being dead. And so, yeah, Edgar Wright picking up more on that action with his, which then leads me into, Quentin Tarantino.
True.
Does that a lot too. I think he's a mix of both of those. Like he has those dialogue heavy moments. Just think of the opening of Pulp Fiction.
Right.
Of the couple sitting at the cafe, the restaurant, just having a discussion.
Right. And then it turns into...
Yeah, we're robbing the place.
We're robbing the place.
But you've got those type of scenes. You've got where Christopher Walken's character is talking about the watch that he got. But then you've also got these quick, fast-paced moments that will happen in a Quentin Tarantino movie. And I know that things like Kill Bill is more inspired by, martial arts movies and that style. But
Pulp Fiction leans a little heavier, and I think it does
because those pulp novels,
right,
which is what Pulp Fiction is based on, and pulp comics,
right,
kind of tied in together back in those days,
right.
So now let's move away from the comedy and action. Let's go a little bit still in the action realm and a little bit more of pure action sci-fi. I want to talk about the Wachowskis.
Okay.
And of course, The Matrix.
Right. Very comic-y.
Yes. So, and the thing is...
Video gamey, but also comic-y.
Well, the comic thing was actually intentional. Right. So when they first pitched The Matrix to the studios, the executives were reading the script and just going, we don't understand this movie.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about it, if you were to just write out what The Matrix was, it'd be hard to follow.
Right.
So
it's almost kind of hard to follow sometimes if you're not paying close attention.
Well,
you're
when you get into the sequels, but that's a whole different route. So, but for the first Matrix movie, the Wachowskis went out. They hired comic book artists. In fact, a couple of them, Jeff Darrow and Steve Skroce. They went out and hired the two of them, and both of them drew. It was a 600-page, from what I gathered. Oh, wow. Shot for shot comic book layout essentially of the movie.
Oh wow.
Literally the entire movie, so it could be shown to the studios, to Warner Brothers, who picked it up. And essentially they said, here is a giant comic book. This is what we want to make. And
they said,
and
sold.
You see it. There you go. I mean, because think about bullet time.
Right.
I mean, something that was created for this movie. It's essentially, that's a director literally trying to figure out how to get the audience to experience something that is out of a comic book.
Right. Something slow. That it's something that is happening so fast, but the characters can perceive it at a slower pace than what's happening.
Yeah. But also taking what essentially becomes a semi-static image.
Yes.
But continuing to have movement in that image, which is what something comic book artists have to be able to do. They have to relay the movement in a single image. Now, of course, years later, the Wachowskis would also get their hands on essentially a comic book adaptation when they would do the live-action Speed Racer.
Oh, yeah.
Based off of Japanese manga. And whatever you think of the Speed Racer movie and all, it's still a very stylized movie. And again, it's that same idea. We're going to use these over-the-top special effects, but we're recreating what is essentially comic books and comic panels. But The Matrix, you got The Matrix coming out in 99, right at the turn of the century, dealing with technology, all this stuff, completely changing action movies. Because of the way it's shot, the bullet time. The number of movies that would then use that
and
afterwards.
parody.
Yeah,
And
the freezing a single moment so that you can just stare at it for a second.
Mm-hmm.
But does something like that, like seeing Trinity jump up, pause, camera rotates around her, seeing Neo bend backwards as the bullets go flying out, does that remind you of a comic? Or do you think freezing an action scene, do you think it helps make that moment feel more heroic? Or
it definitely builds tension.
Yeah.
I would say. And it definitely reminds me of comic books, because if there is a really cool action scene, I know you have shown me, it's like, look at this picture.
Yeah.
And you can stop and you can
and
see
you
all
look
the
at
details
all the different things. Yes.
that that the artists have left for you.
Yeah.
And all the time that was taken into it. And you can like really appreciate the style that's happening. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think it's a really cool way to build tension and still also offer that homage, that like appreciation of the physical art that these actors are doing.
Yeah.
Of, moving their bodies and things of that nature. Like, I think it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, it's that, again, you get that splash page in a comic where it's like, okay, we just want you to look at this for a minute.
Right.
Take this in.
Take a moment.
Take in
There's
a moment.
no
Realize
words
what's happening here. Yeah.
There's no words here. We just want you to look at this picture.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what the Wachowskis were doing in The Matrix. So the last director, and I'm sure there are plenty we can talk about, plenty more we can go into, but the final director that we're going to talk about today in this one shot, again, I think he uses the visual style in a way like Wes Anderson. He uses the dialogue in a way. The camera work, famously static.
Right.
And of course, that is Kevin Smith.
Obviously.
Massive comic book fan.
Right.
He is a comic book writer. There are Daredevil comics out there, Green Lantern, I even think. Several comics out there that were written by Kevin Smith. He's had reality shows and all that's about comic books. But if you look at his early movies like Clerks,
right.
Mallrats, Chasing Amy, they are exactly like it's essentially, in that time, there were the indie comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin Smith was creating this universe.
Right.
Again, you think about how like Marvel has their 616, main universe. DC has, the primary Earth, that they have a shared universe. Yeah. There's little things in like a Green Lantern comic that will remind you, oh, this is happening in the same world that Batman is in. And of course, you got characters like Jay and Silent Bob that pop up in just about all of these. Kevin Smith did the same thing. He created what has been known as the View Askew-niverse.
Okay.
Because, his movies are called View Askew.
Oh, okay.
So we got 1994's Clerks. Then we got Mallrats. Again, Jay and Silent Bob. Then all of a sudden connect all of that. And we've got like this crossover. Oh, this is all happening in the same realm. Also in Mallrats, you've got that Stan Lee actually makes one of his very first cameo appearances. Okay. We get Chasing Amy. And also because also in Mallrats, the main character is an aspiring comic book creator. So you've got things like that. Chasing Amy is also comic book artist. Because I think in Chasing Amy, they're creating the Jay and Silent Bob comic, which then turns into, when the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back movie comes out later, it's turning into a movie, and he plays off of that.
Is Dogma in the same universe?
I believe
Jay and Silent Bob are in it, right?
Yes, I believe it's all, even though it gets a little confusing because there are people who were in these other movies that are now playing different characters.
Yeah.
But of course they had in the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, which I totally forgot the name of it. They have Matt Damon show up as Loki.
Oh, that's funny.
In that one, you even got dialogue in Clerks.
Yeah.
Which is a very like Wes Anderson,
dialogue heavy.
Dialogue heavy. It's black and white.
But I think the difference there is that the background is a lot more detailed.
Yes.
Like
true.
it's a lot more chaotic, but there's so much to look at that you can get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
You can either listen to what they're talking about, or you can pay attention to the little things that are happening that aren't the main focus.
But I think that something like Clerks really feeds off of that in the early 90s, there was the independent comic push. And so I know you've read like Ghost World.
Right.
You know, and that kind of that same look. I mean, a lot of those comics were black and white.
Right.
And
very...
It was a lot dialogue heavy.
Yes.
And just people having conversations.
There's not really a plot or a point. It's just, here are these characters. This is how they view the world.
Yes. So I don't know how familiar you are with Clerks and Mallrats, but
I saw Clerks once.
But those characters, I feel like they belong to a specific quirky kind of sandbox where, again, everything's connected, everybody knows everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same slackers on the street.
Yeah.
You know, they show up, Jay and Silent Bob. Does that kind of interconnected world building, does that make a movie universe feel more like, I guess, comforting? Like you feel more connected? Or does it create it, maybe makes it more addictive to watch?
I don't know if it's addictive for me personally, but I do find it makes it a lot more personal. Like you feel like you're not watching just like this grand story. You're watching somebody tell you like a part of their soul.
Yeah.
A little bit. And whether or not I connect to that is neither here nor there. Like they're just trying to tell you a part of how they view the world.
Yeah.
And you get to walk away either understanding it better, having your maybe not your viewpoint changed, but definitely like understanding a bit of a different world. Or if you are a part of, if you agree, maybe you feel a bit more connected. You feel a bit more seen. Your world gets a little bit bigger than it was when you first walked in.
Do you think, because John Hughes did something similar.
Yeah.
His movies supposedly existed all in the same universe.
Allegedly.
You didn't see a lot of crossover. There were like a couple of characters you'd see.
Right.
There's the one I can even think of where Kevin Bacon, who it's supposed to be his character from She's Having a Baby.
Yes.
Although nothing's
obvious
about that, but then he's in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. There's a couple of other, I know, crossovers to where it's supposed to be the same universe. So like I can't really think of a lot of other directors who've done that, where they've kind of kept everything with it. That's not obviously like
superhero,
DC, superhero related. You know, that's intertwined their movies, because I don't even think Spike Lee has ever done that, or Quentin Tarantino doesn't really do that to make it feel like his movies are all part of the same universe.
Yeah, like these people could step out of this movie and walk into the next movie and it would all make sense.
Correct. So
I'm trying to think of somebody. Yeah, that's something to think about. Definitely reach out to moving panels if you can think of something that we can't think of.
Yeah. But we'll go ahead and wrap this one shot up. You know, so whether you're looking at the symmetry of Wes Anderson, or the kinetic energy of Edgar Wright, or the storyboard comic book world that created The Matrix, or again, an extended universe like Kevin Smith has done, what these movie directors have proved is that comic books have, in a way, transformed how movies are written, how movies are shot. Because these are people who grew up with comic books.
Right.
These are people who, whether they were avid readers like Kevin Smith, that we know was, whether they only just knew about him in existence, you know, they did affect the way that this medium has grown. Whether, doesn't matter if there's a superhero in sight or not.
Right.
So, but we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Bethany, thank you for for bringing your insights to this episode. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
And as Bethany said, head over to our social media pages at Moving Panels. Tell us, do you know of some movies that were inspired by comics? Do you prefer a movie that looks like the pages of a comic, or one that moves like a comic book? But don't forget also to subscribe to the show so you can always catch up with our new episodes. And we're going to continue our summer of inspired by movies and discussions. But for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.